Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show is about to begin.
Hi everybody, I'm Terry. Jeremy and I are co-CEOs at Harvest Earnings. We talk about the business practices we love, but even better, the ones we love to hate. Come be a fly on the wall.
Hello, Terry, my co-CEO.
Hello, Jeremy, my co-CEO.
And the reason I start out that way is there's been
And the reason we're wearing matching shirts
is we got a note that apparently we jointly wrote, or maybe it just shows that we think alike. So the reason I thought it'd be interesting to talk about co-CEOs are kind of a confluence of things that brought this to mind. One is when we have meetings, as you've pointed out in the past, people are very, very surprised how we work together. That we are jointly involved in virtually everything, even though we have different personalities, we have different strengths and weaknesses, we have different points of view. We personify the two heads are better than one. So that, and that's come up recently, so that was one thought. The other thought that I had was we work with so many senior executives of these big companies who personify in many ways is lonely at the top of their division or top of the company, top of whatever, because they're often stressed out of their mind because their jobs are far bigger than one person's worth of skill and experience. And that got me to thinking, why is it that co-heads, co-leads, co-CEOs are so rare that the last time I actually worked with co-heads was back at Goldman Sachs in the 1980s. And in all the decades we've worked together with all these executives at large companies, we haven't run into a single co-head, co-lead situation. And yet I think it's a much better way of managing. So why don't you explain why what I just said must be true?
I think you'd be much better at explaining why than me, so I'm going to let you know. It's really, for me, kind of hard to explain to people how we actually do operate and why it works so well, which it really, really does. We're definitely two heads are better than one. We do agree on the vast, vast, vast majority of things, but definitely not everything. You write a lot of words, and I take out a lot of words. You like to start with a blank sheet of paper. Yeah, you like to start with a blank sheet of paper. I like to start with something we've already written a million times and just customize it for the situation. I mean, and sometimes sometimes you add a lot of words that are a lot of value, and sometimes we should start with a blank piece of paper. I mean, those are really obviously extremely minor things, but I think one of the huge positives for us is that we often, when we're, say in a sales call or whatever, we get asked a lot of questions. Oftentimes you're answering a question and I'm doing a lot of good listening. If it was just one person who's answering the question, it's much harder, for example, to read the room. We were just talking about reading the room. I think we've already talked about the example where I was watching Bill Demchak react to you saying something about setup. And if it was just you in the room, you never would have noticed. So having two sets of eyes on things is really super useful.
Yeah. I mean, I think our experience, even though the particular jobs we're doing are so different than what a lot of execs do, the challenges are the same. So, senior executives in big companies have, first of all, an enormous amount of knowledge that they have to do the job, to be able to manage people and understand their problems and understand the linkages between things. And clearly two people with different backgrounds, but who share the same values, but have different perspectives and different ideas and come at problem solving differently and bring a wealth of knowledge. It just makes it so much easier. The second is, I think that a lot of managers feel incredibly stressed because they know there are things that they're weak at that they either are avoiding until it's a big problem, or they're trying to put on a, confident, I know what I'm doing. And that is also stressful when you don't really know what you're doing and you have to sort of pretend to the world that you do. If you have a trusted partner like we do, where you can say, I don't know what to do in this situation, and there's that trust, then you get all the benefits of, two people's perspectives. And it may turn out that neither of you know exactly what to do, but you sort of join at the hip and say, this is what we're going to do. And it gives everyone more confidence, even though, it may not work. And I think a lot of companies should be.
Well, I totally agree. But I think that the probably one thing that holds a lot of people back from doing this is that, boy, you have to let your ego go.
Absolutely.
Or at least one of the two. And this is, I'm kidding. And this is something that is part and parcel of the service that we sell, right? We ask our entire team when working with clients to let their ego go, but we really have to do it as co-CEOs, because you don't always get your way, and you have to not be obsessed about that.
Right. No, there does have to be absolute trust in the other person, so that if you don't get your way, you still feel like, that's going to be a good thing. So some of this is about when there's conflict, how do you manage the conflict? Other times there's no conflict, right? It's pure problem solving and creativity. Two people doing a crossword puzzle are likely to do it faster than one person doing a crossword puzzle.
That's a very analogy.
A lot of life isn't about conflict. A lot of it's about, what's the smartest thing to do next? And also with different personalities, team members, and this is certainly true in any large company where somebody may have hundreds of thousands of people reporting to them, if not directly, still through a pretty big team of maybe 10 or 20 that they see frequently and work with frequently or more, is different personalities help you solicit and use the knowledge and passion and creativity of your team. Because there might be someone who, prefers talking with you. They sort of simpatico with you in a way that they're not with me. Or someone with me that,
I have two examples.
Okay.
It's Ted Lasso. Jamie Tart is left in a room with Beard, and he says, I don't know how to talk to you. And Beard says, then it's working. And then the other one, remember a situation at a client with our colleague Bernie, who made a comment? You don't remember? He thanks God for me every day. Because you were more in the detail on that particular thing. And I was suggesting that perhaps you should back off a little bit.
Yes.
But I mean, there are definitely those situations in reverse. People go to you for, you want to analyze, you want to get some report or something. You're going to be the go-to for that, not me.
Right. And it's not jurisdiction shopping. It's not trying to work around the other person. It's just where, to use another analogy, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. There's some pieces that fit with me in some places and others that fit with you. And, but, an executive that's running a large organization, knowing that maybe there's people that are quieter, that their partner deals with better, or there are people that love telling long stories, and then there's people like me who love listening to them and telling their own long stories. So we spend the half hour before we get to the issue, whereas other people, so the joint personalities also get more out of their teams.
Yeah. In part because we can point things out to each other that people who are reporting to us, although we don't even think of it that way exactly, but, might be less, especially somebody newer, might be less comfortable.
Right.
Like, I like to say to you, I overstand, for example, because oftentimes you're very good at explaining things. And sometimes it's, well, here's this explanation, then let me explain it yet a different way in this way. And of course, some people need that. It's great, but
I don't know if whether you've ever heard the term mansplaining, but let me tell you what it is.
And that's another thing about co-CEOs. You could, of course, get some built-in diversity, equity, inclusion if you want. This isn't exactly what we're talking about here, but even just with two different personalities, you're getting some of the benefit of that. But even better if you can...
I would say it's huge in terms of diversity of at least kind of mindset, perspective, experience, even if not generated by the categories that are usually referred to when talking about diversity. But then, we have two genders. We came from two different parts of the country originally. There are.
I was in industry.
Right. I've never run a P&L. I had never done sales. Why you signed up to work with me is a complete mystery, really, now that I go through the qualifications that I had for the job.
I don't think it's much of a mystery.
But I was going to say another thing, which is this is how evolution works, right? The whole brilliance well, it's not brilliance, but the whole phenomenon of evolution is there's two strands of information on each string of the, let's say the DNA, and they're similar
And
enough.
who do we credit for discovering? Can we just pause for a moment to credit Rosalind Franklin?
Yes.
It's no longer Women's History Month, but gosh darn it, she should be known by everybody instead of just a subset of everybody. Pray continue.
And it was a good example of diversity because the two guys did not have her talent. It wasn't gender diversity. They didn't have her talent for doing crystallography. That was the critical, the linchpin. But by having, two individuals that come together and can form a combination, that then when change happens in the environment, there's more flexibility, there's more resources to draw on. So everything can appear like super strong and super great if it's just one set of things until the world changes a little bit and exposes the weaknesses of one. And if you have the other one there.
So, couple things. So we don't divide and conquer, and we're extreme that way. And we're not necessarily saying that everybody should try and replicate that, because I think it'd be really hard, because we just happen to be extremely simpatico on so many issues that it works.
And our business.
And complementary. Right. Yeah. So there's that, but I think you wanted to talk about a little bit the Goldman Sachs model and how they did it, or still doing it in some ways.
Yeah, and not that this is the anti-McKinsey or consulting podcast, or done that, but in the 1980s when I started working with Goldman when I was at McKinsey, I did learn a story that some decade or two before, Goldman had actually come to McKinsey to say, what do you think about using co-heads? And McKinsey, in its infinite wisdom, said, absolutely terrible idea, will never work. Don't do it, ruin the company. Instead, Goldman did use co-heads to great effect in terms of its financial success, and instead just stopped using McKinsey for the next 20 years. I'd like to say until I showed up, but that really had nothing to do with it.
Uh-huh. And then you did that editorial project. So that was exciting. But there's also, there's apparently quite some good empirical facts that companies with co-heads outperform those with a single person at the top dramatically. Right. So there's proof that this makes good financial sense as well. But also, it's just, in addition to it being less stressful, it is more fun. You know how you can't, you need somebody who, for the inside jokes and, whatever. It is less stressful, it's less lonely, and it's more fun.
So the two things, one is
What'd you say?
I said it's less lonely at the top. So on the Goldman thing, what I observed when working with them was, to your point, unlike us, if you think of it as a Venn diagram, they may have had an overlap like that, whereas we have an overlap like this. So it's not qualitatively different, but it is sort of quantitatively different what the overlap was. So they might have two people, one who was really good at sales and one really good at operations. And it wasn't that each just owned that and only made the decisions there and stay out of my knitting. That's not in our opinion. That's just a peer. But it might be that one did more of the sales stuff and one did more of the operation stuff. But in the many places where that overlapped, they could work smoothly together. Or when talking to their bosses or when talking to their big clients, they could do things together when doing other things. So it's, as you said, it's not that we're saying everyone co-head should do everything together, but there should be a shared accountability, shared decision-making, and not bright lines about this is mine, that's yours. The whole point is I trust you. We might move to different areas out of comfort and knowledge and speed. The other thing is, and your point about Bernie was critical to this, I think a lot of people think in co-heads, the two people go into a room, fight it out, and then come out united to show everybody there's one decision. That's not the best way for it to work. The best way for it to work is for everyone to know, they're two people, they have different opinions, they figure out what they're going to do, but it's warm enough and public enough and emotionally satisfying enough that someone like a Bernie will say in front of us, I thank God every day that you're around, and sure, it was meant humorously, but as you like to say,
He didn't say it in front of me. He only said it in front of you. He only said it in front of you,
oh,
which makes it even more impressive, really.
I probably was saying Terry told me I should blah blah blah. Yeah. So
Probably.
it should be it's not a fake thing. It's real. So, anything else we should say about this other than the mystery? The mystery is thousands of big companies out there with tens of thousands of executives where this would work perfectly, and only the smallest number actually doing it, and those who have the courage to do it are doing better. And yet that does not permeate the zeitgeist. And if anybody says, by the way,
Yeah.
you're just doubling our management expense, they are completely missing the point. Because in many cases, if you have two co-heads, you don't necessarily have the 8 people underneath. Maybe you only have the 7 underneath. Plus, it's well worth it.
Yeah. And I want to punch the point that I think a lot of the reason this is not out there in the zeitgeist the way it should be is ego. It feels nice to just be the head, and having to share that is tough. And then people use the excuse of, oh, but what if they don't agree? Or, how do you resolve conflict? Or all of that, which is baloney. So,
Agreed.
All right, more fun later.
They like the ego part of being the sole person. And then behind doors, it's like, oh my God, what am I? How do I do this job? What am I doing? It's so stressful. Okay, more fun later.
Yeah.
Bye.